Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of All Things Considered Franchising, powered by Scott Milas, franchisecoach.com. I am your host, Scotty Milas. All Things Considered Franchising is a podcast dedicated to the franchising industry, entrepreneurs seeking to get into the business for the first time, and people looking to diversify a portfolio, a range of subjects. Scott Milas, franchisecoach.com is a consulting organization that I founded many years ago that helps people research and explore business ownership, building a business model, and then introducing the opportunities that fit. I have a very, very interesting guest today, and somebody we've just kind of watched each other for over, it's got to be over 10 years now, and
That's right.
And we thought it would be a great idea to actually be on each other's podcast. So
That's right.
I guess I drew the short straw and I'm first. And I'd like to welcome Martin McDermott, who is president and founder of Franchise Interviews. For anybody who has been watching podcasts and looking for information on franchising Interviews is a leader in that category, been around for almost 17 years or 17 years now. And Martin is also a professor over at Purdue University in their global division, teaching marketing and course leadership on marketing, I guess, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, welcome to the show, Martin.
Thank you, Scotty. Like I said, it's a privilege to finally be able to speak to you face to face. As I mentioned earlier, I feel like I know you already, so I'm talking to an old friend. So this is a privilege for me.
You and I, since we've kind of circled the globe here in franchising, we won't go into, ages or anything, but we've been around the block. You certainly have had your finger on the pulse of the franchising industry, but there have been a lot of changes over the years.
Yes.
It's become a political topic, what's going on in California and some of the other states, but franchising still is a reliable and a what's the word I'm looking for? Just a reliable opportunity or option for people to explore in business ownership. Give us your take and what you're seeing in the franchising industry and just kind of your thoughts on if somebody out there is listening saying, hey, I'm really thinking about it, but I don't know what to do at this point.
Yeah, it's, it is interesting for me, Scotty, because when I got into franchising, when I started studying franchising back in, I was like 1999, I think at that time, there was only, I think about 1,200 different systems from what I remember, the IFA reports. I think today, I don't know how many we're up to. It's like 2,500. Is it 4,000?
4,000. That's what the last IFA meeting had. 4,
that number just keeps going up and up and up, doesn't it? And I always say, like, when is it going to stop at some point? You see more industries franchising all the time. And, I guess that could be a good thing, right? And it could be a bad thing. What I love about franchising, Scotty, is someone said this on my show once, and I forget who it was. I'm gonna have to go back to give him credit, but he said that franchising is an unfair advantage in the sense that if you think about it, with franchising, you're getting, and I'm preaching to the choir, but you're getting two very important things. You're getting a sophisticated system that someone has worked on for a very long time. And you're also getting a strong brand in some cases, not all cases. But if you have those two things that take a very long time to build, you're kind of starting, if you think about like the analogy of baseball, you're kind of starting on third base, right? As opposed to starting on first base. So your chance of getting home is much quicker, or you have a greater chance of doing that. And that's what I love about franchising, is the opportunity. I actually study it too, Scotty, on a scholarly level. I think I mentioned to you, I have 6 publications on the topic of franchising. Yeah, so I go a little bit deeper, so when I'm doing a podcast, I'm kind of thinking, I say, okay, how can I apply this to research, and get it published in a scholarly journal? So that's one of the things that I do as well. And it's amazing that I've been doing this show now for 16 years. I think I've done about 850 interviews.
Wow.
And yeah, and one of the questions that I always ask at the end of the show, which I'm going to ask yourself when I have you on it, is I always ask, what advice would you give to an aspiring entrepreneur looking to buy a franchise? And it's so interesting, Scotty, because, and I don't know if you can guess what the number one answer is, but it's over 50% of the time, my guests will say to me, do something that you're passionate about.
Right.
And I think that's important, right? I mean, that
Right.
right, you want to do something that you're passionate about and something you love, but there's got to be a little bit more to it than that, right?
You know what, Martin, you are touching on a subject that, a topic that I 150% agree
Hmm.
with you. It isn't always passion. Passion's
Right.
great, don't get me wrong.
Of course.
You know, in marriages, there are a lot of passions, but there are a lot of bumps in the road too.
Right, right, absolutely. And with our show too, Scotty, I always say that, our show is more of an introductory point for aspiring franchisees. Is we kind of introduce entrepreneurs to different particular brands, different topics, and then, once someone comes to our webpage, if they find franchising to be a viable opportunity, then they go to guys like yourself. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
I think it's important that someone really does their homework. I think they need a lot of guidance
Yep.
from franchise consultants like yourself. In the old days, we used to call them brokers, right?
Correct. Yep. Consultants
Today,
is the new professional word.
right, absolutely. And that,
Yep.
and that totally makes sense. I had, I appreciate your service so much, Scotty. One of the guests that I had on my show was such a long time ago, but there were these two gentlemen, they were looking to get into franchising. They used a franchise consulting service. I can't even remember which one it was. But when the franchise consultant came back to them, she recommended window cleaning as a viable opportunity for them. And both of them looked at her. They're like, "Are you crazy?" To make a long story short, they ended up getting into, I think it was fish window cleaning, if I
Yep.
remember
Yep.
correctly.
Know the brand. Yep.
They loved it. I mean, they were so happy. They ended up buying another one, and they became multi-unit franchisees. But I always say, wow, I mean, if it wasn't for a franchise consultant, maybe they would have steered towards some other opportunity that they said, okay, we're passionate about it. They weren't passionate about window cleaning, right? But nevertheless, it turned out to
Right.
be an amazing opportunity for them. And, franchising, it doesn't discriminate. I mean, you could
Nope.
have
It doesn't.
a high school education, you could have a doctorate degree, master's, it doesn't matter. I mean, it levels the playing field for everyone. And that's what I love about franchising, Scotty, is that if someone wants to be an entrepreneur, but maybe they don't know how to be an entrepreneur, franchising is a wonderful opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and you touch on, and just two comments about what you said, that about the two gentlemen you used about the window cleaning.
Hmm.
I think sometimes, and this is one of the practices and conversations that I have with my clients, is that sometimes ego gets in the way of a
Right.
decision process.
Sure.
Window cleaning or
Right.
portable toilets,
Right.
or
Right.
it's kind of like they're not comfortable going to be sitting around the dinner table talking to friends and say that they own a window cleaning business.
Right.
Yet they don't see the upside to where their goals are.
Right.
That it gets them to their goals, or could
Right.
potentially get them to their goals.
Right.
So it's just interesting that how ego. And the other thing is that it's research. Look, you've been around the block,
Yes.
and everybody. It seems to be the white flag that gets thrown up. I want to do some research, and
Hmm.
there's no better research than talking to the brand and then talking to the franchisees within the brand. Everybody
Correct.
says, I want to go online. I want to do some research. I want to look at Google reviews or
Right.
Yelp
Right.
reviews. And I'm saying, well, wait a minute. How often do you see a Yelp review that's positive? So,
Right.
I mean, so if you don't
Right.
have thick skin to handle reviews, then maybe you shouldn't be a business owner. So, in any type of format, an independent or a franchisee. So,
Right. Right.
well, let me ask you this, Martin. You've seen a lot of people, come across your airwaves. A lot of people you've
Hmm.
met, a lot of people that have been successful. You probably know some people that struggled.
Yes.
What do you see? Maybe one or two commonalities between the people that are successful in
Hmm.
business ownership, franchising, and maybe a couple of common threads of people who you say struggle with it a little bit.
Right.
Any advice to our listeners on that?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. That's a great question, Scotty. And it sounds kind of cliche, the answer that I'm going to give you, but I mean, there's so much truth behind this. Is I think I know if you are going to get into buying a franchise, if you're a franchisee, I think you have to trust that system 100%. I had a woman on my show a long time ago. Her name is Julie Bennett. She wrote a book for
Yep.
Franchise Times. Okay,
Yep.
it's
I
funny how
know
we know
Julie. Yep. Yep.
we know
Know
her
Julie.
present. She wrote something in her book. I mean, it just stood out because I said, "Oh my God!" I said, this is franchising." She said she was interviewing a franchisee, and I couldn't remember which brand it is because it's been so long since I've read the book. But the franchisee said this. She said, "If the operations manual told me to write in red ink on Tuesday and blue ink on Thursday, I would do it."
Right.
You have to go into it having that trust, don't you? I interviewed one of the most successful franchisees to a brand, Liberty Tax, which you're probably familiar
Yep.
with. And so my question was, what I wanted to know the most, Scotty, was when I had this gentleman on the show, is I said, how did you become the number one franchisee? You'll appreciate what he said. He said, all I did was what they told me to do.
Yep.
That was it. That was his response. It wasn't like anything like, oh, I'm this brilliant person. I have all these different traits and things like that. I just did what they told me to do. When I had Tariq um, Fareed
Edible
on my show,
arrangements.
yeah,
Yep. The
yeah,
edible
Edible
arrangements. Yep.
Arrangements. He said the same thing. He said one of his most successful franchisees. He said, "Do whatever this guy, referring to Tariq, says, and you'll be successful."
Right.
And that's the truth, isn't it? I mean, so I
It
think
is
if you are going to go
100%.
into it, you have to follow the system. There's no, and I hate when I say this sometimes. I think entrepreneurs get upset, but there's no creativity in franchising sometimes, is
You know
there?
what? You just hit the nail on the head because as we were talking before we started the air of the show, I had mentioned to you that I was down at a trade show down in
Yeah,
the Dulles, Virginia area, Chantilly,
right.
through Franchise Expo, Michael Hyman and his group, Dennis. And I was speaking, and one of the questions that came up was, why do people fail at franchising? And
Right.
I said, there's really two reasons that people fail. One is they go into this undercapitalized.
Correct.
I said there's really three reasons. The second is they really didn't have their partner or spouse support. So
Correct.
that kind of,
Right.
and then the third one is they just didn't follow the process. They're trying
Right.
to reinvent the wheel. So I always try to explain to my clients that if you are a process entrepreneur, someone who can follow a process to the
Mm-hmm.
T,
Right.
not saying that suggestions or ideas are unwanted, they are wanted, but they have to be uniform to the brand. But if you
Right.
can follow 99.99% or 100% of the process, you are going to be successful. If you are a what I call an engineer type process,
Mm-hmm.
somebody who likes to put together all of the manuals and the marketing plans and want to be involved in every aspect of the business, then be
Right.
an independent. Don't go into franchising.
And
So
that's
you're
not easy to
absolutely right.
do.
No,
That's
it's
not easy
not.
to do, Scotty, is it? I mean, I think about, a lot of times people have said to me over the last 16 years, they're like, you have this podcast on franchising. Why don't you go into franchising? I don't know how good of a franchisee I'd actually be. You know what I mean? Because even though I have this tremendous appreciation for franchising, that's not easy to do, to find someone who will totally
Right.
100% trust the system. Um, that's very difficult. Franchising is, I think John Hayes said this once, is he said, franchising isn't for everyone. It's not for most people. And I didn't understand the first time he said that when I was at one of these franchise shows. I was like, what is he talking about? It's not
Right.
for most people. Now I get it 16 years later, you know? So I think it takes a special type of person to get into franchising.
Well,
Um,
I think there's a human psychology to this as well.
mhm,
As people, as humans, our psychology is to kind of push back or want to do something different or think we can
right,
do better. So
right.
it's really hard sometimes as a business person, especially in franchising, just to sit back and say, okay, I'm going to do this and kind of rely on somebody else, especially if you're the type of person that likes to tweak or just kind of take a chance,
Yes.
so to speak.
Right. Right. And that's me to some extent, just a little. I have a little bit of that in me,
Right.
Scotty. So that's why, I would be a little hesitant to go into franchising, but nevertheless have this great appreciation for it as well. One of my favorite books, I don't know if you ever read it, is The E-Myth Revisited by
Yep.
Michael Gerber. And I can't tell you how many times that book has been referenced on my show, whether it's from franchisees or franchisors. And I actually had the chance to interview Michael 3 times on my podcast. And that's one book that I certainly recommend reading before you get into franchising. There's a lot of other good ones too out there, by the way, as well.
Yep. There
Um,
are.
but that's one I would certainly take a look at. Yeah. You mentioned family support too, Scotty. I mean,
Yep.
I'm glad you mentioned that because this is very difficult, isn't it? You know even better than I do, that, you need that support, right? From your wife, your husband, your children. I mean, this is a big commitment, and you use the word marriage, and a lot of times I compare it to a marriage. It's at
Yep.
least a 10-year commitment in many instances. So, right, you're going to have to have that support from your family, and you want to meet their family as well. I think I've heard this on your show. I can give you credit. Is you want to date a little, right? You
Yep.
want
Yep.
to meet the family, meet the parents, right? And see what is the culture like in that family. It's interesting how life can be applied to franchising, couldn't it?
Yeah, hey, look, I always I've shared a story about many years ago when I was part of the burger concept, and
Yeah,
we had a husband and wife team come into Discovery Day, and he was this big, gentle, bear, really
yeah,
friendly kind of guy,
yeah.
and she sat there with her arms crossed, didn't crack a smile, and got up in the 15, 20 minutes into Discovery Day and insisted that somebody go to Dunkin' Donuts for her. And my point is that we had to call up and say, okay, Bob, congratulations, we're going to award you a franchise, but we have bad news. Well, what's the bad news, Scott? Well, we can't award a franchise to your wife, so
Wow,
we're going to
wow.
have to pass on this, because
Right,
it is. And then the other thing is, I've always used the analogy, if your spouse went out or partner went out and spent 150, $200,000 without telling you or what it was
right,
about,
right.
would you be aggravated or reached
Right.
into your savings account or
Of course.
retirement fund? So
Right.
you're absolutely right. The partnership, the spouse, you don't always have to agree with the franchisor, but you got to get along.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah, I think that's a great example. I love that example, by the way.
Yeah. So, but anything else about the industry to our audience out there? I mean, about franchising. I mean, you've used it. You use the terminology of like starting on third base. I love it.
Mhm.
I may have to steal that from you and start using it, but
That's
that's
okay.
a
I
great.
stole it. I stole it from somebody. You know where I got that analogy from, Scotty? A gentleman named George Native. I think he's a founder of Boston Chicken or Boston Market. He was a big base Boston Red Sox fan. And he used that analogy. So I have to give him credit. I
Wow,
stole that
that's
one. Yeah.
right,
So
right,
he
right.
gets credit for it. Yeah. But that is a great analogy. But I mean, in thinking of other things too, Scotty, is the whole process of due diligence. I think we kind of
Yep.
touched upon that. I mean, eh, I've often wondered, and I don't know this, you know it better than I do, is how long does it take to actually buy a franchise from the time you say, okay, I want to start looking up franchise opportunities to the time you make the decision. It's got to be a long process, I
90
imagine.
to 120 days, if not longer.
Yeah, if not
Yeah.
longer, because if you are going to truly speak to franchisees that are currently in the system for the brand that you're interested in, that could take a long time too, in setting up appointments, talking to them on the phone and things of that nature. Um, so I imagine it's a very long process.
Yeah, yep, it is. It's 90 to 120 days, if not longer. And to be honest
Yeah.
with you, anybody who's really in a hurry, that's when
Hmm.
I get a little concerned. I mean, those are the people that I have a concern. Hey, I'm in a hurry. I got to get this. I got to start a business. I lost my job. I got to get. It's like, whoa, slow down.
Right, of course, of course. I like the franchise shows too, though. I haven't
Yep.
been to a franchise show, Scotty, since COVID, so it's been about 3 years since I've been to one. But I miss going to those. I used to go to the one at the Jacob Javits over
Yes,
in
the big one put on by
Washington
MFE,
D.C.
Tom Borghese,
Yeah,
and everybody. Yep.
I used to love to go to the shows, just walk around and see all the new concepts and opportunities and get to speak to people, that were on my podcast in the past, because you feel like you know them once you interview them. And I really have to start getting back out there and doing that again, because those are a
Yep.
lot of fun, aren't they?
They are. I mean, this one I did this past weekend was, I mean, I think they had close to 3,000 registrations. I mean,
Really?
it was just, it
Wow.
was nonstop from morning until close. I mean, it was both days, Saturday and Sunday. So,
Right.
and it
Right.
was really nice. But these shows have a lot of what we call the embryonic brands, the ones that have
Hmm.
just started
Just
franchising, and
starting.
a few name take brands there. But
Hmm.
it's great to talk to people, and I always find it interesting that when people come up to me, they go, "Can you help me find the perfect franchise?" And I'm like, "Perfect? Well, what's perfect?"
There's
It's
no such thing, right, Scotty? I mean,
no such thing as it. Nope, nope,
there's
not
no
at
such
all.
thing. Even when, I had another gentleman on my show. We were talking. I think he might have been in real estate at one point of his life, and people would say, I want the perfect home, and there's no such thing as a perfect home when you're buying real estate too, right? I mean,
Right.
you're always going to find something wrong with that house, whether it's the windows or the basement or something like that. I think franchising is very similar to that process. It'll never be 100% perfect. You'll never find that
Yep.
100%
I think the
opportunity.
best guidance I give people, or at least try to give people, is look, after 90, 120 days, and it's time to make a decision.
Hmm.
If you're not excited about your potential and
Right.
that you feel that you could be a great business owner and
Right.
maybe be the number one franchisee in the system,
Right.
you probably shouldn't do it, because I think that's really what it boils down to. I mean, there's always going to be fear and anxiety.
Sure.
You don't want fear and anxiety to be your decision driver, but fear and anxiety also drives more questions. But if you're,
Hmm.
going into it to make the decision, it's okay to be nervous and scared,
Of
but you
course.
just have to have the 150% confident. It's like people that want to open a burger or a pizza concept today. They go,
Sure.
the pushback is that, oh, there's just so many pizza and burger places and chicken and subs.
Right.
And my
Right.
comment has always been, yes, but it pleases the masses. There's a lot of opportunity,
Right.
and you just got to be better than everybody else.
Exactly. You have to set your goals high too, don't you,
Yes.
Scotty?
Yep.
It's when I was speaking to Michael Gerber, he said something fantastic. He said most businesses fail not because they think too big, but because they think too small. And I thought about that for a while. I said, that's very interesting, is maybe we should think beyond the one unit franchise, you know what I mean, and say, right,
Yep.
I want to be the number one franchisee to a system. That's a big goal, isn't it? Or, I want to own two of these or three of these or maybe 10 of them one day, and I think sometimes that gets you excited, when you set those goals really high, because sometimes if you fall a little short, that's not so bad, is it? But when you set your goals really low,
Right.
you know maybe go a little bit higher,
Yeah,
so
it's the person that says, "Hey, I got $100,000. I want to invest it in a business, but I want to make $500,000 a year." Well, yeah,
correct.
great. Show me where you can
Right.
find it, and I'll give you the
Eh,
$100,000.
Me too. Likewise.
It's well, we've
It's
been
true.
talking to Martin McDermott, who is president and founder of Franchise Interviews, also a professor of marketing over at Purdue University. Um, this is Scotty Milas. I'm the host of All Things Considered podcast, All Things Considered Franchising. Martin, any last words? Any encouraging words for our entrepreneurs? Whether you're looking to diversify a portfolio, add on, or do this for the first time. Any other last encouraging words you want to pass on? And where people can get a hold of you, or listen to some of your interviews and
Yeah.
podcasts themselves.
No, absolutely, Scotty. I really appreciate this opportunity to get to speak with you today. And as I mentioned, I'm going to have you on my podcast, so I'm looking forward to that as well. So for your listeners, they can go to franchiseinterviews.com, and again, they can hear every single interview that I've done from day one, Scotty, to the very first interview we did was back in 2006 with a franchise called PB Loco. It was a peanut butter franchise. They're not in
Interesting.
existence anymore. Yeah. But that's the interesting thing too, Scotty, is a lot of the franchisors, of the last 16 years that have been in my show, on my podcast, they don't even exist anymore. Some of them,
Yep.
most of them are still out there, but there are situations where a franchise just does not make it, so it's not it's not a 100% guarantee. It's not a home run every single time. As you mentioned, there's so many variables to get
Yep.
into, or take into consideration why something works or why something, doesn't work. But again, overall, I think I've been doing the podcast such a long time because I truly believe in the franchise model, you know, the ability to get into a business that has a strong kick-ass system, a great brand. Those are very important things, you know, going
Yep,
back to that analogy of starting on third base, you know, as you can get to home a lot quicker. So again, franchiseinterviews.com, you can hear every single interview that I've ever
that's
done up
great.
to this point, and this has been a privilege for me to get to speak to you.
Great. Well, this is Scotty Milas, your host today for All Things Considered Franchising. To listen to more of my podcast, you can go to YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or go to allthingsconsidered franchising.com, a brand new spanking new website with a list of all of our podcasts. Or you can head to scottmilasfranchisecoach.com if you're thinking about or like to start the journey of researching and exploring business ownership. As I tell people who start the journey, that at the end of the journey, no is okay. You aren't required to say yes. I think sometimes it takes a lot more courage to say no than yes, but it is an option to say no. So, Martin, again, great to have you. I hope we get you back
Thank
in the
you,
next
Scotty.
6 months or so just to see where the industry is. And
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll be bumping into each other and enjoy the time with your son eating those hamburgers because I know
I
that's
will. Thank you, Scotty. This has been
all
a
right.
privilege. Thank
This is
you.
Scotty Milas saying so long for now.